Rain drizzled against the tall glass windows of the Drake Corporation building, tracing silver lines down the panes like tears. Inside, Clara Bennett sat at the edge of a velvet chair, wringing her hands in her lap. Her coat was still damp from the walk, her worn shoes leaving faint marks on the pristine marble floor. The receptionist had looked at her with polite disinterest before directing her to wait for Mr. Drake. She hadn't expected the man himself to summon her, not after the awkward encounter 2 days ago when she'd met his daughters at the park. The elevator doors opened with a low chime. Alexander Drake stepped out, tall, composed, and intimidating in his charcoal suit. His presence filled the room effortlessly. His dark hair was perfectly in place, his steel-gray eyes sharp and unreadable. Clara rose quickly, feeling small beneath his gaze. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice low and precise, the kind of tone used to seal million-dollar deals, not to speak to someone like her. "Thank you for coming." She nodded nervously. "You wanted to see me about the girls." He gestured toward his office. The doors closed behind them with a soft click, muting the city noise. Everything inside was sleek, glass, chrome, and dark wood. Yet somehow it felt cold, like a place untouched by laughter or life. "I've been watching," he began, turning to face her. "You have a way with my daughters." Emma smiled for the first time in weeks after that afternoon in the park. Clara's face softened. "They're wonderful girls. They just need stability," he finished, his expression tightening. "Something I haven't been able to give them." He paused, his hands clasped behind his back. "I'll be direct, Miss Bennett. I'm a busy man. My daughters need someone they can rely on, someone constant." He turned to her fully now. "I need a mother for my daughters." Clara blinked. I'm sorry. A mother," he repeated evenly. "Someone who will care for them, guide them. Someone they can trust." Her heart pounded. She'd expected perhaps a job offer as a full-time nanny, not this. "Mr. Drake, I don't understand what you're asking." He stepped closer, his eyes steady. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them, absurd and unreal. Clara stared at him, trying to decide if this was some kind of test or cruel joke. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "You're kind. You're patient. You care for my daughters without expecting anything in return. In my world, that's rare." She shook her head, breath trembling. "This can't be real. You're a billionaire, Mr. Drake. I'm nobody." His gaze softened for the first time. "You're exactly what they need. And if you accept, I can offer you security, a home, comfort, and a life where you'll never have to worry again." Clara looked down at her hands, calloused from years of small jobs, her heart torn between disbelief and aching temptation. She thought of the small room she was renting, the eviction notice folded in her bag, and the laughter of those 2 little girls echoing in her memory. When she finally met his gaze, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're not proposing love, are you?" "No," he said, his tone calm but unreadable. "I'm proposing an arrangement." And though the rain outside still fell, the world inside that office seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her answer. Clara woke the next morning in a room that didn't feel like hers. The bed was soft, too soft, and the sheets smelled faintly of lavender and wealth. For a long moment, she lay still, staring at the ornate ceiling, listening to the distant sound of the ocean beyond the cliffs. This was the Drake mansion, her new home, her new life. The word wife still felt foreign on her tongue, though nothing about this arrangement resembled a marriage. When she finally rose, she dressed quietly in a modest dress and brushed her hair until it looked presentable. A housekeeper had offered to help her the night before, but Clara had declined. She didn't know how to exist here yet, not as a guest, not as a wife, certainly not as a mistress of this house. Downstairs, sunlight filtered through high-arched windows, touching the marble floors with warmth. The mansion was enormous, but eerily silent, the kind of silence that came not from peace but from restraint. She followed the faint sound of laughter to the breakfast room. Emma and Sophie were seated at the long dining table, their plates filled with pancakes shaped like hearts. A maid stood nearby, but it was the girls' bright faces that made Clara smile. Sophie, the older one, looked up first. "Good morning, Clara," she said, polite but shy. "Good morning, sweetheart." Clara hesitated at the doorway before stepping in. "Those look delicious." "Emma, the younger one, didn't speak. She never did. She only lifted a pancake and offered it to Clara, her big brown eyes shining with quiet affection. Clara's throat tightened. She sat beside them, pretending not to notice the way the maid glanced toward the door, as if waiting for someone. A moment later, that someone appeared. Alexander entered, already dressed for the day, phone in hand, his expression all business. His presence changed the air in the room. The servants straightened, the laughter dimmed slightly. He set the phone aside and greeted his daughters with a nod, his voice gentle but clipped. "Eat properly, girls," he said, then looked toward Clara. "You slept well, I hope." "Yes, thank you," she replied softly. His gaze lingered a moment longer than it should have, and she saw the faintest flicker of something, uncertainty, perhaps. This arrangement was new for him too. When breakfast ended, the girls ran off toward the garden, and Alexander gestured for Clara to walk with him. The hallway stretched long and grand, their footsteps echoing. "I'll have my assistant set up whatever you need," he said. "Clothes, personal things. You can use the east wing, it's closest to the children's rooms." Clara nodded, unsure what to say. "They're wonderful girls," she managed. "They just need time." "I know." His tone softened for a breath. "You seem to have a way with them already." She smiled faintly. "Children don't need wealth, Mr. Drake. They need warmth." He looked at her then. Really looked. Something unspoken passed between them, a fragile understanding suspended in that quiet corridor. For the first time since she'd met him, his sharp edges seemed to ease. Later, she found herself in the garden with the girls, watching them chase butterflies through the lavender bushes. Laughter filled the air again, small, free, and real. From the balcony above, Alexander stood watching. He didn't smile, not quite, but his eyes followed the woman who had brought light into the house he'd turned into a fortress. For the first time in years, he wondered if a deal could turn into something more, something dangerous, something he hadn't planned for. And down below, Clara felt it too, that fragile thread of connection neither of them dared to name. The gala glittered with everything Clara had never known: chandeliers like frozen waterfalls, violins singing from a balcony, guests wrapped in silken arrogance. She stood near the edge of the ballroom, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, feeling more like a spectator than a participant. Her gown was beautiful. Alexander had chosen it himself, but she still felt like an imposter draped in borrowed light. Across the room, Alexander was surrounded by investors and old family friends, his face composed, his smile measured. He looked perfectly at home beneath the glow of crystal and champagne. Yet when his eyes met hers, even for a moment, something shifted. She saw a flicker of softness, the same look he gave his daughters when no one was watching. But the warmth didn't last. A woman in a crimson dress glided toward her, tall, poised, and impossibly confident. Clara recognized her instantly from the whispers of the staff. Vanessa Harrington, Alexander's former fiancée. My, Vanessa said, her tone wrapped in honeyed poison. "So you're the new Mrs. Drake. I must say, Alexander has a type, innocent, easily molded." Clara's smile faltered. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," Vanessa purred, her eyes glinting. "You're clever, I'll give you that. But don't mistake charity for love, darling. You think marrying him changes who you are. You're still just the help." The words hit like ice water. Clara turned away before Vanessa could see her flinch, her pulse pounding in her throat. She needed air. Outside, the garden stretched under silver moonlight. She leaned against a marble pillar, breathing hard, trying to shake the humiliation from her chest. She didn't hear Alexander approach until his voice broke the silence. "Clara," she turned sharply. "I just needed a moment." He frowned, studying her face. "What happened?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "It's fine." But he didn't believe her. His gaze hardened. "Did someone say something to you?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." Alexander's jaw tightened. Was it Vanessa? Clara's silence was answer enough. He exhaled through his nose, looking back toward the ballroom. "She shouldn't have spoken to you. I'll handle it." "Don't," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Please, don't make a scene. I'm not your business deal to defend." That made him still. "Is that what you think this is?" She met his eyes then, and for the first time, She didn't see the billionaire, she saw the man beneath the armor, confused, uncertain. "You said it yourself," she whispered. "This marriage was an arrangement. But I can't pretend it doesn't hurt when people look at me like I don't belong here." Something sharp flashed across his face. Anger, pride, maybe even guilt. "I've given you everything," he said quietly. "A home, safety, respect." Clara's eyes glistened. "You gave me walls, Alexander. Not respect, not trust." Before he could answer, she stepped past him, her heels echoing softly against the stone path. He watched her go, torn between his pride and the strange ache tightening in his chest. Inside the ballroom, the music swelled again, but for Alexander Drake, the evening had already ended. Somewhere between the chandeliers and the cold moonlight, he realized he'd done the one thing he promised himself he never would, he'd let her matter. And by the time he returned to the crowd, Clara was gone. The wind was sharp along the coast that morning, tugging at Clara's hair as she stood by the fence overlooking the sea. The small cottage she'd rented sat behind her, modest, peaceful, and utterly unlike the Drake mansion. It had been 3 weeks since she'd left. 3 weeks of silence, of aching uncertainty. She missed the girls more than she dared admit. She thought of Emma's quiet smile, Sophie's endless questions, and even Alexander's steady voice echoing down the long marble halls. But she couldn't go back. Not to a life built on conditions and contracts. The sound of tires on gravel made her turn. A sleek black car rolled to a stop beside the cottage. The door opened, and Alexander stepped out, his suit too formal for the windswept cliffs, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ocean filled the silence. "You found me," Clara said at last, her voice soft but steady. "I've been looking since the day you left," he answered, walking toward her. His eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from something deeper. "The girls asked for you every night." Her throat tightened. "I couldn't stay, Alexander. Not after." "I know," he cut in quietly. "I said things I shouldn't have. I let my pride speak for me." He stopped a few feet away, the wind ruffling his hair. "You were right. It was never about respect for me, not at first. It was control. I thought if I kept everything under my terms, nothing could fall apart again." Clara's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them away. "You can't control love," she said softly. "Or people." He gave a small, humorless smile. "I've spent my life believing I could. Then you came along and made me wrong." She looked away, out at the endless blue horizon. "Why are you here, Alexander?" He stepped closer, his voice low and raw. "Because I miss you. Because the house feels like a tomb without your laughter. Because Emma started talking again, and the first thing she said was your name." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, a quiet sob escaping before she could stop it. He moved closer still, carefully, as if afraid she might vanish with one wrong word. "I was a fool to think this was just an arrangement," he said. "You were never part of a deal. You became the heart of my family. The heart of me." The wind whipped around them, carrying the crash of the waves below. Clara searched his face, looking for the man she'd feared, but all she saw was the man who'd finally learned how to feel. "I don't want security or wealth," she whispered. "I just wanted to be seen." He reached for her hand. "Then look at me now." When his fingers closed around hers, they were trembling, not from cold, but from hope. "Clara Bennett," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I'm not asking for a contract this time. I'm asking for forever. Will you come home? Not as an arrangement, but as my wife, my partner, the woman I love." Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She nodded, unable to speak, and he drew her into his arms. Behind them, the ocean roared, wild and endless. Somewhere between the wind and the waves, the past was carried away, and what remained was something real. For the first time, Clara felt what home truly meant.